Thank you for joining me today, mathematicians, as we look at examples of derivatives. In particular, what we're going to look at is the derivative of x squared minus 2 over x plus 3e to the x. So now as we start this one, what we want to do is, I always like to try to simplify and then figure out what's going on big picture. And so to begin with, to simplify, I'm going to realize that, well, I have a sum of two functions. So that's the first thing that catches my eye. So I'll distribute the derivative across the sums, and I'll also factor out any constants that I have. And so what I'm going to end up with is x squared minus 2 over x prime plus the derivative of 3e to the x. And now, as I look at 3e to the x, I realize I can factor out the constant 3, so I get plus 3 times the derivative of e to the x. And so what I've done is I've taken this longer problem and turned it into a simpler problem by trying to focus on these pieces at each time. Now, I'm going to furthermore look at, okay, well, can I simplify any more? And so if I look at this one, notice that I do have x squared minus 2 all over x. So I can actually rewrite this as 1 over x times x squared minus 2 prime plus 3 times e to the x prime. Now the reason why that's going to be helpful is because if I notice that dividing by x is the same as multiplying by 1 over x, I notice that I can distribute the 1 over x. And so what I get is x squared over x, which is just x, minus 2 over x. And I'm going to take the derivative of that plus the derivative of 3 times e to the x. And so now again, I'm making this easier piece by piece. And what I have is that, well, I can simplify this more by distributing across this difference and factoring out constants. All right, so I just erased to give myself some more room, but now remember here I have x minus 2 over x. So what I can do is I can rewrite this as the derivative of x minus 2 over x. Take the derivative plus 3 times the derivative of e to the x. Now I'm going to simplify one more time before I finish taking the derivatives. So I'm just going to have the derivative of x. Now here what I have is that, notice that 2 is a constant, so I can factor that out and I'll be left with 1 over x. However, I'm also going to write 1 over x as x to the negative 1 so that I can use a power rule. So what I end up with is minus 2 times the derivative of x to the negative 1 plus 3 times the derivative of e to the x. Now that I've simplified this all the way, it's turned this big problem into 3 simple problems. And so all I have to do now is take those derivatives, and the derivative of x is just 1, minus 2 times the derivative of x to the negative 1. This is a power function because x is to a constant. And so I would multiply negative 1x to the negative 1 minus 1. So I would get negative x to the negative 2 plus 3 times, and the derivative of e to the x is just e to the x. So what I get is that my derivative is going to be 1 minus 2 times negative x to the negative 2 plus 3e to the x. Now you can simplify this if you'd like, but since we have the derivative, I'm going to leave it as is. Notice that it is important to simplify beforehand because it saves you work. However, at the end, I tend not to simplify because that causes more work. And so the idea is that I want to get the correct answer out, and I want to make it as simple as possible on myself in order to help myself to keep from making any unnecessary mistakes. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something and enjoyed the process. If you did, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It all helps to make sure that we can get this out to anyone else who needs calculus help.